Ambedkar's contribution to the March of Rights on the Indian soil. In the March of Rights on the Indian soil, Ambedkar's contribution can be seen in three distinct phases of his life: social reformer, statesman and religious renouncer. Social reformer. Though there is heavy overlap between these three phases, his role as a social reformer can be traced from the point when he was not a direct part of state institutions. This phase begins with his engagement with the Southborough Committee when he asked for equality of opportunity for the untouchables in power sharing. As power is a form of rights, Ambedkar demanded for power sharing through communal representation and variation in criterion for franchise. While asking for power sharing rights, he argued for applying the self-determination doctrine at the societal level. Self-determination, Ambedkar says, a principle which enunciates the rule that every people must be free to determine the conditions under which it is to live. It would be a sign of imperfect realization of the significance of this principle if its application were restricted to international relations, because discord does not exist between nations alone. But there is also discord between classes from within a nation. Ambedkar 2005. Ambedkar started Mahatsatyagraha 1927 and Kalaram Temple Entry Movement 1930 for civil and political rights of the untouchables, which are classified as claim rights. He struggled for adult franchise for both men and women along with communal representation before the Simon Commission and at the Round Table conferences, which shows his commitment for right to moral equality as adult franchise, which implies one person, one vote and one value, is one instrument in modern democracy to affirm the right to moral equality. Statesman. As a statesman, the contributions of Ambedkar began with his appointment at various constitutional positions. As Labour member in Governor-General's Executive Council, Ambedkar was instrumental in enacting those legislations which were meant for protecting working-class labourers from exploitation, and for applying right to moral equality in India, such as the principle of payment to the position instead of persons. The principle of payment to the position instead of person has been incorporated in the Indian Constitution with the name of equal pay for equal work. As the chairman of drafting committee of the Constituent Assembly, he was instrumental in insertion of the fundamental rights and the directive principles of state's policy, special provisions for protection of minorities and weaker sections of society, and adult franchise in Indian Constitution. In the Constituent Assembly, he emphasized turning formal political rights, fundamental rights into substantive rights, that is, socio-economic rights, so that equality can be realized in every sphere of life. His vision for socio-economic rights for the welfare and emancipation of untouchables, minorities, depressed classes, marginalized and women can be seen in The State and Minorities, a memorandum which he submitted to the Constituent Assembly on behalf of All India Scheduled Castes Federation. In addition to these contributions, Ambedkar advocated for inbuilt self-corrective mechanisms in the Constitution for materializing the objective of Constitution enshrined in the preamble. He envisioned following self-corrective mechanisms. 1. Power rights with implementation of equality of opportunity in power sharing and decision-making processes, in addition to communal representation. This was also necessary for preventing reproduction of inequalities and institutionalization of social prejudices and biases. 2. Application of adult franchise, for which he argued for waging a relentless war, so that moral equality can be affirmed time and again. Presence of a strong opposition in Parliament to check the arbitrary use of legislature power by the party in power. 4. Presence of the Supreme Court for providing constitutional remedies to citizens. He termed right to constitutional remedies as soul of the Indian Constitution. Ambedkar had firm belief that rights are nothing unless remedies are provided whereby people can seek to obtain redress when rights are invaded. 2005. For providing these remedies, he argued for enacting appropriate legislations. As law minister, he introduced the Hindu Code Bill and battled for the Uniform Civil Code. Both were meant to bring gender equality, but unfortunately only the former could be introduced in Parliament during his tenure. Though he failed to get the bill passed in Parliament, different provisions of the bill came into existence subsequently in parts. The Hindu Code Bill ushered us into an era of property and inheritance rights of women, right to divorce, adult marriage, provisions for special marriage, marriage allowance and so on. Nowadays Indian women have more or less all these rights, but most of these ideas were first endorsed by none other than Babasaheb Ambedkar. Religious renouncer throughout his struggle for equality, liberty and fraternity, Ambedkar never denied indispensability of religion in human life. But he argued for religion of principle rather than religion of rule. Contrary to the religion of rule, the religion of principle recognizes the importance of individual and remains open for rational interpretation. This gives a lot of scope for teaching equality, liberty and fraternity in the religion of principle. In addition to this, intermediation between God and human being is also not required in the religion of principle that gives individual rights of moral consciousness. Ambedkar struggled for finding out such religion for his followers. Towards the end of his life, he converted into Buddhism along with his followers, but with modification in ancient Buddhism. Ambedkar envisioned community group rights leading to individual rights. He saw communal representation as an instrument in realization of the individual rights. He advocated for equality of opportunity and power-sharing power rights so that reproduction of inequalities and institutionalization of prejudices could be prevented. His struggle for implementation of universal adult franchise that affirms right to moral equality of individuals by providing one person, one vote, one value, irrespective of race, religion, caste, class, gender, ethnicity and nationality is worth applauding. The right to moral equality in political sphere, also referred as formal rights, often creates churning in society if inequality remains alive in social and economic spheres of human life. This churning poses direct danger to natural rights like life, liberty and property, and indirect danger to the idea of rights, because political democracy that guarantees formal rights always remains vulnerable to be thrown away. Ambedkar was aware about this fact. Therefore, he argued for expanding frontiers of rights in the social and economic spheres of human life by establishing social democracy through redesigning society on the principles of equality, liberty and fraternity. For redesigning society, he further envisioned strong nation-state, which can also rescue individual from the tyranny of society. For his reliability on state and state institutions, Ambedkar is projected as a propagator of positive liberty, which is nothing but liberty rights.